There is a small village called Para, about 40 kilometers from Jessore. You have probably never heard of it. There is no reason you should have. It has no big market, no famous mosque, no river worth mentioning. Just paddy fields, a few old mango trees, a pond that fills up every monsoon, and maybe 200 families who have lived there for as long as anyone can remember. A quiet place, an ordinary place. In that village, there was a man named Karim. He was 43 years old, a farmer. He had the kind of hands that come from working the land for 20 years without stopping. Rough, cracked at the knuckles, permanently stained with soil. He had a wife named Farida and a daughter named Mitu, who was 12 years old and spent most of her free time drawing birds in the margins of her school notebooks. Kingfishers, mostly. She had never actually seen one up close, but she drew them anyway. Karim was not the kind of man who talked about what he felt. He got up before 4 every morning, ate whatever was left from the night before, and went out to the field while the rest of the village was still sleeping. He worked until he couldn't anymore, came home, washed up, ate dinner, and went to sleep. Then he did it all again. He had been doing it for 20 years. But inside, quietly, Karim had been carrying something very heavy for a very long time. It started with the land. 12 years ago, he had borrowed money to start a small poultry farm. It seemed like a reasonable idea at the time, a way to make more, to build something. But the chickens got sick, the loan grew, and in the end, he had to sell a piece of land that had been in his family for 2 generations to pay back what he owed. His father was still alive then. He did not say much when it happened, but his silence said enough. His father died 2 years later, and Karim had spent every year since then believing that the last impression his father had of him was of a man who had failed. He also thought about his brother, Rahim, who lived in Dhaka now and had a proper salary and a flat with ceiling fans in every room. He thought about the people in the village who still remembered the land, who sometimes mentioned it in conversation in a way that was polite on the surface but carried a small, sharp point underneath. He thought about all the things he had tried that had not worked, and slowly, over years, without anyone telling him to, he had built a story about himself. The story went like this: I am not enough. I have never been enough, and I probably never will be. He never said this out loud. It was just there, like a low hum underneath everything. Underneath the work, underneath dinner, underneath the moments when Mitu laughed at something, and the sound of it almost made him forget. One afternoon in late October, after a long day in the field, Karim went to sit by the village pond. He did this sometimes, not for any particular reason, just to let his body rest before going home. The harvest season had been exhausting, and he needed a few minutes of nothing. There was an old man already sitting there. His name was Abdur Rahman from the next village, who sometimes came to visit his sister in Para. He was maybe 70 years old, maybe older, with white hair and a fishing line in the water, even though the pond was too small to have anything worth catching. He was one of those people who seemed to be in no hurry at all, as if time moves differently around them. The old man looked at Karim when he sat down and said simply that he looked like someone who hasn't rested in years. Karim said farming doesn't wait. The old man said no, it doesn't, but neither does a man's body. They sat quietly for a while. Then the old man mentioned the land, the piece Karim had sold 12 years ago. He said it gently, not cruelly, just as a fact he knew, the way old men in villages know everything eventually. And he asked Karim why he still carried it the way he did. Karim said because people remember. The old man thought about this for a moment and then said, some people remember, yes, but you remember it every single hour. There is a difference. Other people's memories don't live inside your chest. Yours does. Karim looked at the water. He didn't respond. Then he said something he had never said to anyone before. He said his father died thinking he was useless. The old man asked if his father had said that. Karim said not in those words.
The old man was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "A man decides what his father meant. That is a heavy thing to carry, especially when you decided it yourself." Karim wanted to argue, but he didn't have the words for it. Then the old man asked about Mitu. He had seen her around the village, she said, and he asked what Karim told her when she did badly at school. Karim said he told her that one bad result is not who she is, that she works hard and that matters, that she will get better with time. The old man nodded slowly and said, "And you believe that when you say it to her?" Karim said, "Of course." The old man looked at him and said, "Then why don't you believe it about yourself?" The question sat between them like something dropped into still water. Neither of them spoke for a while. Then the old man said, "You lost a business. You lost land. Those are real losses, and I'm not telling you they weren't. But since then, you have farmed this land for 20 years. Your daughter goes to school. Your wife doesn't go hungry. You wake up before the sun every single day and you keep going. What kind of man does all that?" Karim said, "A man who had no other choice." The old man shook his head. He said, "No, a man who had every excuse to give up and didn't." Karim didn't say anything after that. He just sat with it. Before he left, the old man said one more thing. He said, "The harshest voice in your life, is it coming from the village or is it coming from inside your own head?" Karim walked home without answering, but he knew the answer.
That night at dinner, Mitu was telling a long story about an argument her friend Ria had over a borrowed pencil. Normal, ordinary. The kind of story that means nothing and yet somehow is everything about what it is to be 12 years old. Karim sat there and, for the first time in longer than he could remember, he actually listened, not with half his mind already on tomorrow's work. He watched his daughter's face as she talked, the way her hands moved, the way she laughed at her own story before it was finished. Farida noticed. After Mitu had gone to sleep, they sat on the porch and Farida said he had been different at dinner. Present, she said, actually there. He asked if he usually wasn't. She said his body was always there, but his mind for a long time had been going somewhere else, somewhere that wasn't good for him. He thought about how to respond. His instinct was to say he was fine, which is what he always said. Instead, he asked her something he had never asked before. He asked if she thought he had done enough for her and Mitu. Farida looked at him for a long moment. Then she told him about the time her mother was sick 3 years ago, how Karim had borrowed money he didn't have to take her to a doctor without being asked. She told him about the 2 months he had walked 6 kilometers each way to the field after selling his bicycle to pay Mitu's school fees. She told him about the season the crops failed and how she only found out much later how worried he had actually been because he had hidden it from her so she wouldn't be afraid. She said he had done nothing but enough, more than enough, and that she only wished he could see it. Karim sat with that for a long time. A dog was barking somewhere across the village. A night bird called once and went quiet. He said he thought he had been very unkind to himself. She said yes, he had. He said he didn't know how to stop. She said maybe start the same way he would tell Mitu to start, one day at a time. The next morning he went to the field the same as always, same time, same cold air, same work. But as he walked between the rows, he let himself have a thought that he would normally push away the moment it appeared. He thought, I have not done everything right, but I have kept going, and that is not nothing. He let the thought stay. There was no big moment. He did not cry. He did not stand in the field and suddenly feel transformed. He just allowed one kind thought about himself to exist without immediately arguing against it. That was all. But it was something. It was the beginning of something. About 2 weeks later, on a Saturday afternoon, he was sitting with Mitu while she drew. She was working on another kingfisher, blue and orange, wings half open, the way she always drew them. He told her it looked like it was going to fly off the page.
She looked up and asked if he liked drawing. He said he had never learned. She asked why not. He said his father had told him it was a waste of time for a farmer's son. Mitu frowned at her notebook and said that was sad. He said yes, it was. Then he told her, "You draw as much as you want. Don't let anyone tell you what a waste of time means. You are allowed to like things you are not perfect at. Most good things take time, and even when they don't come out the way you want them to, the trying is not wasted." Mitu looked at him for a moment and asked, "Are you talking about me or about yourself?" Karim laughed, a real one from somewhere genuine. He said he thought maybe both. Karim did not become a different man after any of this. He still got up before 4. He still worried about money, about the harvest, about whether Mitu would be able to get into a good school one day. He still heard that voice sometimes, the low hum that said he was not enough. But he learned, slowly and imperfectly, to answer it. He learned that being kind to yourself is not the same as pretending things didn't go wrong. It is not about ignoring failure or erasing loss. It is about holding everything, the mistakes, the grief, the things that didn't work out, and still deciding that the person carrying all of it deserves some grace. It is about speaking to yourself the way you would speak to your daughter when she fails a test. With honesty, yes, but with gentleness too. It is about understanding that getting up every morning when getting up is hard is not nothing. That keeping people warm when you have very little is not nothing. That trying again after falling is never, ever nothing. The village of Bagarpara is quiet, ordinary, easy to forget. But in a small house near a paddy field, a man learns something that changes everything once you truly and completely learn it. That the relationship you have with yourself is the longest relationship of your life, and it deserves the same kindness you give to everyone else.